we all hear it, right. Never give up. But what does that actually look like when things get really tough?
Yeah.
When you want to just quit? That's what we're going to dive into today.
Absolutely.
How to persevere, how to keep going when you feel like throwing in the towel. And we've got a fascinating source for this deep dive. It's a really powerful message about getting through tough times. It's inspired by the Bible.
Okay.
But we're going beyond just the message itself. We're going to look at how these ideas were actually used to get through a really dark period in someone's life. And then we're going to pull out some practical steps that we can all use to kind of keep our heads above water, you know?
Right.
So think of it as never give up, but with a side of actionable advice.
I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, because, it's interesting. This source, right off the bat, it doesn't sugarcoat things. The author talks about this feeling of being totally overwhelmed.
Yeah.
Like they were at a breaking point, ready to give up. And they even described their prayers feeling empty, like no one was listening.
Yep.
That feeling when you start to question everything, like you're putting in all this effort, but is it even worth it?
Oh, yeah, I think we've all been there.
Absolutely.
It's like that feeling of just complete exhaustion, like you've given everything you have and it's still not enough. And, it doesn't always have to be these big, life-altering events either.
Right.
Sometimes giving up looks like staying stuck in a bad habit or letting a dream just fade away because you've convinced yourself it's impossible.
Exactly. Giving up, it can take so many forms. And a lot of times, it starts with that little voice inside, the one that's full of doubt and all the negativity.
Mm-hmm.
But this is where things get interesting in this story. The author describes this pivotal moment when a friend shared a verse with them from Galatians. Let us not become weary in doing good, for at the proper time we will reap a harvest if we do not give up.
And it's not just a random verse, right?
No.
It directly addresses what the author was struggling with in that moment. And it really highlights how important it is to have people around you.
Yes.
Even if it's just one person who knows what to say, when to say it, it can feel like a lifeline when you're struggling.
Oh, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes we just need that reminder of what we already know, but we've forgotten.
Mm-hmm.
Or just a different way of looking at things when we're too close to the situation. And that's what this verse does, right?
Yeah.
It takes the focus off the current struggle and puts it on the future potential, that harvest that's waiting for those who don't give up.
It's funny because there's actually a ton of research that supports this idea of focusing on the potential payoff. Like, it's a big deal in positive psychology and motivation.
Oh, totally.
Like, there's this idea of future selfing, where you imagine your future self, the one who's already achieved the goal, and that picture helps you stay motivated now.
I love that.
And this isn't just some feel-good idea either.
Right.
Studies have actually shown that just visualizing success, like picturing it, can improve your performance and make you more likely to actually reach your goals.
That's so cool.
Yeah, and it makes sense, right?
It does.
If you can see it, you can believe it, and then you're more likely to work towards it.
Exactly. And when you think about perseverance from like a psychological angle, it's really all about building grit, that mental toughness that helps you overcome all the obstacles. There's this researcher, Angela Duckworth. She's done amazing work on this. And she found that grit, it's a way better predictor of success than talent or IQ.
It's not about just being naturally gifted then.
Yep.
It's about that drive to keep going, even when things get tough.
Exactly.
And that's really what this source is getting at. It's not about just waiting for things to magically get better. It's about choosing to persevere, to keep pushing forward, even when you feel like giving up.
And it's really cool, this idea of perseverance. It's not just about reaching some external goal. It also works for personal growth, like becoming more resilient, more mature.
Yeah, that ties in perfectly to what the author brings up next. A passage from James 1:2-4. It talks about how going through trials, like facing difficulties, it's not necessarily a bad thing because it builds perseverance, and that leads to like a more mature and whole person.
That is a powerful message. It's like saying challenges are actually opportunities to grow. And the process of overcoming them, it actually makes us stronger, more complete.
Let's be real though, nobody's doing cartwheels when they're in the middle of something hard.
No, for sure not.
But what this passage is saying is that there can be a deeper purpose to our struggles, like a silver lining to that storm cloud,
Yeah, and just finding that purpose, even a tiny glimmer of hope, it can make the burden feel a little lighter. It gives you a reason to keep going, like a North Star to guide you through the dark.
It reminds me of Viktor Frankl, the psychiatrist who survived the Holocaust. He talks about the importance of finding meaning in suffering. He saw that the people who could find meaning in their experiences, even in the middle of such horrible hardship, they were the ones more likely to survive and even thrive afterwards. It's incredible, isn't it? It really shows just how resilient the human spirit is. Even in the darkest times, we can find a way to keep going, to find a reason to hope.
So it's not just about blindly pushing through pain. It's about finding that thread of meaning, that purpose that makes our struggles feel significant. And sometimes that meaning comes from something bigger than ourselves, like a belief in a higher power.
Which brings us to the next part of the source, where the author talks about the strength we can find in faith, specifically in their belief in God. They quote Isaiah 40.31, which talks about those who hope in the Lord renewing their strength, soaring like eagles.
That's powerful imagery. It evokes this feeling of freedom, of rising above the challenges and finding new energy. But how do we actually tap into that strength?
Right.
When we feel depleted, when we can barely keep our heads above water?
That's where the source gets really practical. And it's where the science of resilience comes in. The author talks about the importance of small steps.
Like breaking down these huge, overwhelming tasks into smaller, more manageable chunks. It's about acknowledging that we don't have to conquer everything all at once.
This is so key, right? It's like giving ourselves permission to just focus on one small step at a time and to celebrate those little victories along the way.
Oh, totally. And there's actually research on this.
Oh, really?
Yeah, breaking down goals into smaller steps makes them feel way more achievable, less scary. It's a classic principle in behavioral psychology, something we can all use.
So instead of getting overwhelmed by how huge the challenge is, we can shift our focus to what we can control right now.
Yeah.
That one tiny action.
Exactly.
And those little actions, those seemingly insignificant steps, they build up over time. They create momentum, and this feeling of progress.
Absolutely.
Which fuels your motivation to keep going.
It's like that old saying, a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. And it's those single steps taken over and over that actually lead to real, lasting change.
So think about it. What's one area in your life where you've been tempted to give up? Maybe it's a personal goal, a work project, or even a habit you're trying to break. What's one tiny step you can take today, even if it seems super small?
Yeah, it could be as simple as sending that email you've been putting off, or making a phone call you've been dreading.
Or even just choosing to believe in yourself and your ability to get through this.
Right.
Because even those little actions, when you do them with purpose and consistency, they can create a ripple effect that leads to real, significant change.
And that's the beauty of this whole never giving up idea. It's not about being superhuman or never having setbacks. It's about the courage to keep going. Keep taking those small steps, even when it's hard, even when you doubt yourself.
And remember, you are not alone in this. We all have those moments of doubt and discouragement. But by tapping into the power of those small steps, by finding meaning in our challenges, and by believing in our ability to persevere, we can overcome even the most difficult obstacles and achieve things we never thought possible.
Absolutely. And sometimes it's those moments when we struggle, when we feel like giving up, that we discover how strong we really are, how resilient we can be. And that's a pretty powerful discovery, one that can change our lives forever. And that's where self-compassion comes in,
Yeah.
Realizing we're all human.
Yeah.
We're going to mess up, have weak moments.
Not perfect.
Yeah.
That's about giving ourselves the same grace and understanding we'd give a friend who's struggling.
Exactly. It's like learning to be our own best friend.
Yeah.
That kindness, that support we give someone we care about, we got to give it to ourselves.
And there's research on this too.
Oh, there is?
Yeah, self-compassion, it's actually linked to being happier and more resilient.
Really?
People who are kinder to themselves, they tend to have less anxiety, less depression. They handle stress better.
Makes sense.
It's like when we beat ourselves up over mistakes, it just adds more suffering on top of it,
It does, and it makes it harder to move on.
Yeah.
But when we can be compassionate with ourselves, admit we're doing our best, it frees up energy.
Yeah.
Let's just focus on solutions.
So instead of dwelling on the setbacks, we can see them as learning experiences.
Exactly, like stepping stones
Yeah.
on the path to growth.
And that's where the source connects this to grace, right?
Yes.
The author talks about how God's grace is what keeps us going even when we trip up.
Even when we don't meet our own expectations.
Exactly.
It's like a safety net. Lets us take risks, try new things without this fear of being permanently judged for messing up.
And this grace, this unconditional acceptance, it's not just a religious thing.
Right.
We find it in relationships, communities, even within ourselves.
For sure, it's recognizing we're all flawed.
Yeah.
Works in progress.
Yeah.
and extending that same understanding to ourselves and everyone around us.
And this brings it back to the whole never giving up, doesn't it?
It does.
The author reminds us that even when we can't see the way forward,
Yeah.
when we feel lost and alone, God's got a plan.
He hasn't given up on us.
And that hits hard. You know, it's like this reminder that we're not just flailing around in chaos.
Right.
There's a deeper purpose,
Yeah.
a guiding force, even when we don't feel it.
Like an invisible compass.
Yeah.
Always pointing the right way, even if we take detours, get lost for a bit.
This really resonates with me because it speaks to that human need to belong, to have purpose.
For sure.
We all want to feel like our lives matter, like we're part of something bigger.
Exactly. And that's the beautiful thing about this never give up message, right?
Yeah.
It's about hope, resilience, believing we can get past challenges and create a life that's meaningful, purposeful.
It's call to action, isn't it?
It is.
To tap into our own strength, the support around us, and to trust that even in the darkest times, there's a light guiding us.
So as we've gone through this source, connected it to all these bigger ideas, what stands out to you? What's really clicking with your own journey?
Yeah, I'm curious, what are you taking away from this so far?
Because at the end of the day, it's not just about understanding these ideas, it's about using them in our own lives.
Right.
To help us handle all the ups and downs of being human.
It's about taking what we've learned and putting it into action, those concrete steps that get us closer to the lives we want, the people we want to be.
Exactly, and that's where the source has some powerful takeaways,
Okay.
reminding us we're not alone in this.
Yeah.
There's help out there, inside, outside of us, that can keep us on track.
Like the power of small steps, self-compassion, the strength from our faith, communities, and that belief in ourselves to keep going.
And this brings us to a really important question the source leaves us with. What's one small step you can take today in an area where you felt like giving up?
What's one action, any action, that helps you feel that momentum again, a bit of hope, that renewed belief in yourself to beat this challenge?
Remember, it doesn't have to be huge.
Right.
It could be a phone call, writing in your journal, even just picturing yourself succeeding.
Because even that tiny step, taken with intention and courage, it can have a ripple effect.
It can.
Creating good change and inspiring those around you.
And sometimes that's all it takes to turn the tide,
Yeah.
to get things moving in the right direction, to reignite that hope that leads to amazing transformations.
So what's that one step you're willing to take today? What's one area where you're ready to embrace that never giving up power and step into a brighter future?
It's like we think we don't have a choice sometimes.
Yeah.
Like circumstances just take over.
You're just swept along.
Right, exactly.
Powerless.
But honestly, we always have a choice.
It's too.
Even when it feels impossible, we can either give into the tough stuff or we can rise above it.
It's not about pretending the hard things aren't there, though.
No.
It's more like,
You got to acknowledge it.
yeah, see it, feel it, and then still choose to move forward.
It's about that inner strength we all have, that resilience to bend without breaking.
I love that. Bend without breaking.
That's a good one, right?
It reminds me that we don't have to be perfect to be strong.
Exactly.
Like, it's okay to have weak moments, to stumble, even fall.
It happens.
What matters is what we do after.
Do we stay down or get back up? That's where this never give up idea really kicks in.
It reminds us we can do so much more than we think we can.
We have the power inside us to overcome anything, reach any goal, if we just don't quit on ourselves.
So let's recap this whole deep dive.
Okay.
We started with that raw feeling of wanting to give up, being overwhelmed, defeated.
Right, and we saw how the source, using those ideas from the Bible, gave a way forward, a way to find strength and hope when things are tough.
Yeah, and we tied those insights to actual research and practical things you can do, like those small steps, being kind to ourselves, finding the meaning in the struggle, and tapping into that resilience we all have inside.
And we realized, never give up isn't just a saying.
It's how we live.
It's a choice we make every day to keep moving, keep trying, keep believing in ourselves, and that a better future is possible.
And as we wrap up, we want to leave you with one last thought, something to ponder as you go about your day.
What's one part of your life where you're ready to embrace this never give up power?
What's one step, even a tiny one, you can take today to get closer to your goals, beat a challenge, or just become the best version of yourself?
Remember, it doesn't have to be a huge thing. Could be a phone call, a journal entry, even just picturing yourself succeeding.
Because even that smallest step, taken with purpose and courage, can make a world of difference.
It can turn things around, rekindle that hope that can lead to incredible change.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, everyone. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep believing in the power of never giving up.